Swimming, biking and running at the racing level requires a tremendous sense of speed, strength and stamina. When combined, you have the exciting sport of triathlon, and you're about to watch one of the showpieces of that sport. Hi everybody, I'm Steve King, and welcome to English Bay, Vancouver, British Columbia, the site of the 6th Vancouver International Triathlon, where some of the world's top triathletes have gathered to compete here over a very tough course. They'll be swimming 1.5 kilometres, then they'll go out and do on an out-and-back bike course, 38 kilometres in total, and finish off with an 11-kilometre run around Stanley Park. Among the pre-race favourites in the field today, we have three-time defending champion Mark Allen, the record holder at 1 hour 48 minutes and 14 seconds. Also from the US, Todd Jacobs of Leucadia, California, recent winner of the Oshima Triathlon in Japan.
Representing the ladies for the USA, Janet Stamper Holland from Flagstaff, Arizona.
And the top Canadian entry, Carol Montgomery from Vancouver, last year's second place in the World Championships.
Isabelle Mouton from France. She's here competing with twin sister Beatrice Mouton.
And from Great Britain, number one there, Glenn Cook, a man who placed second in the World Championships to Mark Allen in '89 and the 1990 World Champion Greg Welsh of Australia. And from Japan, one of their top sprint triathletes, Taro Shirato. Truly an elite field of international athletes. Well, conditions today are somewhat less than ideal. We have rain and the water temperature somewhat cooler than the athletes would like. So let's get over to the start for the showdown at English Bay. There are 7 waves going off here today, almost 1,000 athletes. The first wave, of course, the professional men, followed 1 minute later by the professional women. And the final wave, consisting of the relays, is going off some 18 minutes after the first.
Well, the ladies' pro wave will be distinguished by the pink hats, as seen by Janet Stamper and Sarah Coop right here.
And that professional ladies wave will be a small contingent, but boy, they're fast. Now let's get ready for the start. And there they go. The 1991 Vancouver International Triathlon is underway. They have 1.5 kilometres of swimming ahead of them.
Those arms are turning over furiously now with Whitewater kicking up. They didn't even see that rower right there. Slight adjustment and they're on their way.
And you'll see someone's already starting to spearhead the field, and it looks like it might be one of the Californians. I think that's Michael Collins there. He's a man we've seen here at Vancouver before. In fact, he was here last year, ended up with a 7th place overall, a very good sub-2-hour time as well. And Mike Collins is one of the best coaches in the US. In fact, he won the Coach of the Year award last year, so he knows what he's doing out front, but he will be expending a lot more energy than those people who are getting into his draft right now, Julie.
Well, we have to distinguish that draft is allowed on the swim. The lead swimmer is making a slipstream, and these other swimmers are getting the benefit of following.
And there go the professional women. Don Andrews, the race organizer, setting them off. This is a small wave, but it is some of the most elite female triathletes in the world. So as they head towards the first buoy at some 300 metres into the race and make the turn to go parallel with the start, we have our leader, Michael Collins, the coach and triathlete from Davis, California, and just behind him, the Brit, Glenn Cook, and in third place, just a couple of metres back, the favourite, Mark Allen. But I'm surprised at this point, Julie, that Greg Welsh is so far off this threesome.
Well, that's not too unusual. I think it's more surprising that Mark is right up in the lead pack for once. We see our first pink cap coming into view.
Not surprisingly, it looks like the Canadian there who's done so well in swimming lately, Carol Montgomery, leading the Mouton twins.
Well, the Moutons are really playing it smart tactically here to sit in her slipstream again and let her do the hard work. She has to side on the boat. She has to find all the orange buoys. She's the one doing the hard work. To let her go would be very dangerous.
And we should remember the Mouton twins arrived in Canada just a week or so ago. They competed in Toronto last weekend, both got in the top 10 there. But Carol Montgomery would love to win this one because it's her first time she's really competed in front of a home crowd this year. We have to remember she's placed second here twice before.
Well, I think that aggression of trying to erase those 2 second-place finishes is showing right here in her strong swim.
So let's take a look at where they're at right now. They've made the turn at the first buoy just beyond 300 metres into the 1,500 metre swim. Back with our leader, Mike Collins. He seems to be opening up now, a little bit of a gap.
It's interesting to watch how kind of rhythmic he's kicking. It's a nice slow turnover. But there again, Glenn Cook and Mark Allen right behind him.
Back with more of the swim after this. We're back with the Vancouver International Triathlon. I'm Steve King with Julie Moss. Right now we're looking at the lead females. And Julie, that's Carol Montgomery out front. Is that expected?
Oh, it sure is, Steve. But look she has doubled her lead on Isabel and Beatrice Mouton. Like I said, that's a dangerous situation, and it's happening right now.
So they can't really afford to let her get too far away at this point because she is a very strong rider and, of course, a powerful runner.
But they're hanging in tough. I think they're sensing that danger is near, and they're going to close that gap if it takes everything they've got.
And for the men, it is Mike Collins of the U.S. still leading in the pack, and he would love to have the prestige of being the first man to exit the water. He certainly is a very solid triathlete. He is, in fact, the record holder for the Spring Lake Triathlon. But what's going on behind him? What is Glenn Cook and Mark Allen thinking about right now, Julie, as they come up to almost the 900-meter mark?
They're content to sit in and let Mike do the work.
And doing the work he is, because remember, these other athletes behind him there, if they're in his slipstream, they're only expending about 80% of the energy that Mike Collins is. Take a look at where they're at right now as they move into the final 600 meters, and then they'll be making their way up that ramp and to the transition area. But the women, remember, they started off 1 minute back, and already the leaders in the women's pro division are overtaking some of the 20 men who took off in that first pack. Carol Montgomery looking up. You notice she's not wearing goggles today, Julie.
Yeah, I really don't know why she would choose not to wear goggles in salty water, but that's her choice. And Isabel and Beatrice are keeping pace with her.
And it appears as though Cook and Allen are keeping pace with Mike Collins there right alongside him at this time.
Again, Carol's stroking out here in the lead. She's got her sights now firmly set on this second buoy. Again, here's another man she can overtake. Without those goggles, though, oh, yeah, right there. She can't see the buoy as clearly. And look at the twins. They're right on her feet now.
But she has some good sighting now as she comes into the final 600 meters. She can look up, and there's plenty to sight upon because there are thousands of people there awaiting the exit of these swimmers. In fourth place is Cara Green, the young junior out of Vernon, British Columbia. She recently got a 17th place in a World Cup race in Vancouver. Michael Collins, presently vying for the lead, was one of a number of athletes who had an opportunity earlier to visit some of Canada's major cities. And Michael was able to tour around the city of Edmonton, Alberta. And it is indeed Michael Collins, the first man about to exit the swim portion with 1.5 kilometers of swimming now behind him. He's about to exit and gain the privilege and the honor of being the first man up to that transition area. And look at that time, 17:23, a very fast swim. But look who's right behind him, Glenn Cook and Mark Allen.
Mark's not wasting any time here running up the beach, taking his wetsuit off.
And as they come through, there's just 7 seconds separating the top three, so that's no time at all. That sort of time can be made up in the transition, Julie.
Of course it can, Steve. In fact, you practice your transitions just so you can make up that kind of time.
And as we look at the women quickly there, we see Canadian Cara Montgomery leading Beatrice and Isabel Mouton of France. But back in transition, Mark Allen, Glenn Cook really going at some speed. But the first man out onto the bike, Michael Collins. He'll be delighted about this, but he needs to really work hard to stay in front of these two men.
Right now, the focus is get on the bike, no matter what. There's a lot of confusion. It's hectic. Right now, a slow helmet, like Mark right now, he's struggling. I mean, that's costing him time. He's putting on clear lens glasses from the rain. Mark's a little confused. Okay, he seems to have sorted it out, and he's on his way.
As Mark heads out, we have Preben Nielsen from Chico, California, just coming into transition. He was a man who placed 12th overall last year. And there is Greg Welsh, some 50-odd seconds back of our leading threesome at this time. That's a lot of work he's got to make up on the bike course there, Julie.
Greg is fantastic at transitions. And knowing he's in the second pack, Mark is going to really push this first part of the bike ride. He's going to try and capitalize on everything he gained on Mr. Greg Welsh in the swim.
And Greg Welsh is no stranger to Vancouver. Just recently, a couple of weeks prior to this event, he was at English Bay where he won the World Cup event by a mere 2 seconds. But back out onto the course, crossing the first bridge there, it is Michael Collins who has established a good lead. He must be delighted with what's happening for him today, Julie.
Of course he is, Steve. This is called pride. He wants to hold the lead.
And as he is holding the lead, so is Cara Montgomery in the swim as she closes in now towards the exit of that swim, and the 1,500 meters will shortly be out of the way for her, but she hasn't opened up much of a gap over the twins, but she's going to come up the ramp in first place as she goes into transition, and Carol is usually very fast in transition.
And as she heads out of the water, Carol has got the psychological lead as well. Todd Jacobs from USA. And here comes Carol. No time to spare. The wetsuit comes off on the run.
And she did a time of 19 minutes and 15 seconds. So as there were only 7 seconds separating the first 3 men, there's only 8 seconds separating the first 3 ladies.
Again, as women are still exiting the water, Carol is struggling just a little bit here. Coming out of the water, I believe it's Janet Stamper-Holland from the USA.
Indeed it is, and her swim time, 20 minutes and 14 seconds. So Carol has really established quite a lead after the other 2 ladies just there in transition, Isabel and Beatrice Mouton. And this is their second race in 2 weeks in Canada. Just last weekend, Isabel placed 5th and Beatrice 10th in the Toronto race.
Steve, at this very moment, I think the twins are wishing for the French Riviera instead of the seawall of Vancouver.
I'm sure they do. They like to compete in Nice and in Cannes. But Carrie Green just going out ahead of Beatrice there, so she'll be delighted with that swim. And also in transition, we have Hideo Miyazuka from Japan heading the wrong way there. He had a good swim for himself at 20 minutes 44 now. He's not meant to mount the bike till he gets it to the pavement there. Little confusion, but now he's off and cycling.
With Sarah Coop coming up the beach, she's got to be wondering where Glenn Cook is, her compatriot and boyfriend from Great Britain.
And she was in 6th place coming out of the water at 21:26. But there's Janet Stamper-Holland. She's really doing well. That's the lady who won at Huntington Beach earlier this year.
Sarah's arriving at the bike racks here and seeing that her bike is the last one. She must be thinking about Carol Montgomery as we see her now pedaling far down the road.
And I should point out, Julie, she's not only out to win today, she'd love to set a new course record.
Steve, I'd venture to guess the cool temperatures aren't affecting Sarah quite as much as the other girls. She's used to racing in the cool weather of Great Britain. However, earlier this week, Sarah had an opportunity to visit Montreal, Quebec, and soak up some love.
So let's recap the swim for you. Karen Montgomery, our leader, from Isabel and Beatrice Mouton. Just 7 seconds separating them. And there's 8 seconds between the men, Michael Collins, Glenn Cook, and our pre-race favourite, Mark Allen. We'll be back with more of the Vancouver International Triathlon after this. We're back with our leader, Mark Allen, in the cycling portion of the Vancouver International Triathlon. Just behind him, though, some 20 to 30 metres back, we have Michael Collins, the man who was the fastest out of the swim. But coming up on him right now is Glenn Cook. As Mike looks across to his left, he sees who that is, Glenn Cook, one of the feared triathletes from Great Britain, a man who was second in the World Championships in 1989 in Avignon, France, behind Mark Allen, known as the Grip. So let's take a look at the graphic and see where they're at. They're now into the first few kilometres, coming alongside Kit Solano. They'll be heading through Spanish Banks on the out and back course at University of British Columbia, where they'll make the turn and head back the 19 kilometres to that transition area.
Mark is certainly looking intense right now, Steve. And what I really noticed was the slickness of the pavement with that water splashing off his pedals and reflecting a mirror image of his bike. You have to wonder, how slick is it out there?
Well, certainly for Mark, he may be used to this because he has travelled the world competing in triathlons. I'm surprised Isabel Mouton here is now coming up onto the bridge just a couple of kilometres into the race, and she is taking Carol Montgomery for the lead.
A nice aggressive move right here by Isabel. In fact, that's going to work to Carol's advantage. She's now going to have somebody else set the pace.
And indeed, as she sets the pace on the bike, we've got plenty of other swimmers out there. And I would like to mention, Julie, this race has the inaugural World Championships for the Clydesdales and Rubins. That are men who weigh over 200 pounds and women who weigh 145 pounds plus. So there's a lot at stake beyond the pros. There's the age groupers, there's the relays, and there's the Clydesdale and Rubins World Championships. Well, at least for the other triathletes now coming into the transition area, the rain seems to have subsided somewhat, but most of them, I notice, have put bags over their saddles.
Well, that seems like a little bit of a waste of time, because once they get out of the water, they're going to be wet and they're going to sit on their bike and their seat's going to get wet again. But these are the weekend warriors, and hey, they're going to try anything to sort of give themselves an edge. Here we are, the mass parade, and isn't it great? Old, young, fast, and slow. Everybody wants to be a triathlete, and everybody who finishes is a winner.
And one of the great things for these age groupers, Julie, is the fact that they get to compete with some of the world's very best, including our present leader, Mark Allen, who's out there on the roads right now, heading towards that turnaround point in the bike. At this point, he's going along Spanish Banks, and he has established a bit of a lead for himself over Glenn Cook and Michael Collins.
The intensity is what always amazes me about triathletes. I mean, just look at his face. He is working so hard, but no harder than this man, Glenn Cook from Great Britain.
And I think Mike's going to be a little bit surprised as he looks over, or should look over to his right, because he can hear Glenn Cook coming up on him at this time. So they're now neck and neck on the bike course as they are approximately 12 kilometers into the cycle portion of the race. Michael Collins recently fourth in the Amakusa Japanese National Triathlon Championships.
Right now, Isabelle Mouton has eyes focusing dead ahead and thoughts only of racing. However, earlier, she and sister Isabelle, natives of Seine, France, were able to spend some leisure time in Winnipeg, the capital city of the province of Manitoba.
For the Vancouver International Triathlon, where Isabelle Mouton is our present leader on the bike course.
And leading she is. She's out of the saddle and she is going hard. Right behind her, Carol is keying on her back and letting Isabelle set the pace.
And it looks like the rain is really going to affect them, Julie. We have to remember last year, Mark Allen set a time for the bike course alone at 52:36. And last year's women's winner, Kendall Morrison, did a time of 29 seconds over the 1 hour mark. So some very fast riding last year, but this rain is certainly going to affect them today.
From that grimace on Mark's face, he is not enjoying the weather conditions, but I think he's going to go for a record anyway. Why not?
Why not indeed? And back in the transition area, though, we have still a lot of activity.
In the swim to bike transition is Sister Madonna Booter. She is such an inspiration to all of us in triathlons, and she is a truly lovely lady.
And she's also a truly accomplished triathlete, Julie, as she is a lady who holds 2 age group records for the Ironman Canada race held up there in Penticton in British Columbia, as well as on the international scene because she's done so well in the Ironman in Hawaii.
Well, I think she's got a few more fans out there today.
She certainly has, and we have to remember she's one of many age groupers out there. And we have to remember there were many age group waves, and some of them were 18 minutes back of the pro men going into the swim.
Sister Madonna heads off, colorfully clad, just entering the 38-kilometer ride. And nearing the turnaround of the 38-kilometer ride is my husband, Mark Allen.
And Julie, you'll be happy to know that Mark has been averaging over 25 miles an hour on the outward leg despite the torrential rain. There we have the turnaround point, and then it's heading back to that transition area for the bike to run. Transition, and then 11 kilometers of running. But long ways to go before then for these cyclists. And looking into second place, it is Glenn Cook, just a few meters still up on Michael Collins, who's really hanging in there.
They've got to be a little conservative on those descents. They are really moving, and those turns are going to come up fast.
And this is a man we've been waiting for from Bangor, Australia. It is Greg Welsh, the reigning world champion, now starting to make a move. And look at that, going on the inside of Michael Collins. He now assumes third position.
Greg is about to ride out right off the end of his seat there.
Indeed he is, Julie. That is, in fact, the optimum position for a rider going at speed on the flats. Some of these triathletes, in fact, have a special brake lever that, in fact, what it does is adjust the seat position for them so that when they're riding up hills, they can sit backwards or be able to stand up, of course. But back to the women, it is Isabelle Mouton, the French woman, who's now in front some 15 to 20 meters up on Canadian Carol Montgomery, the lady who was second in the World Championships last year in Orlando, Florida, to Karen Smyers of the US. And Carol had a great start to the season with a win in the first World Cup race in St. Croix in the US Virgin Islands.
The weather has gone from a challenge to downright dangerous, and everybody back at English Bay is getting a dose of that rain, too.
And probably one man it's going to be very dangerous for is 50-year-old Scotty Webster of Kamloops, a more physically challenged triathlete. He's going to be attempting to go onto the bike course in his wheelchair. But you have to hand it to that man, a really courageous effort. That wheelchair is going to take him towards transition, where he'll get on a one that's been specially modified for him, and that'll be using a pulley system. Coming in right now, the final male and female finishers of the Vancouver International Triathlon swim portion of the event, and of course the race director always happy when this part of the triathlon is over. Stay with us for more of the exciting Vancouver International Triathlon. Coming up, the finish of the cycle portion.
Transition now, and Mark is notorious for not having super fast transitions. especially when he's cold. And right now, his feet have got to be feeling a little numb. He's had cold rain just dripping down his legs for the last 38 kilometers.
And I don't think he was too accustomed to that when he's been training in Boulder, Colorado, Julie, but he has had a phenomenal ride indeed. Not as fast as last year, but considering the conditions, he has averaged 41 kilometers an hour. His split there for the bike, 55.40. And I think that's about 50 to 60 seconds faster than the second and third place man.
Well, Steve, here's an example of what cold feet are like trying to slip into fast racing flats. These shoes have actually special laces so that he doesn't have to tie them, which is a blessing, but, oh, he's just cold.
Maybe he is, but there's a good reason. This man has been voted Triathlete of the Year for the last 2 years. He is also, remember, the reigning Hawaiian Ironman champion, a man who set a course record, 8 hours, 9 minutes in that fantastic duel in the lava fields with Dave Scott. And there he goes now, out onto the run course, 11 kilometers ahead of him.
Well, not too far ahead of Greg Welsh, and right behind him, Glenn Cook from Great Britain. Greg is notorious for a fast run, and I think he's really psyched up to give Mark a run for his money today.
Well, Greg was some 52 seconds back of Mark after the swim, but he hasn't made up any ground on the bike over Mark, but he has, of course, over Glenn Cook. So as he comes into transition, Greg Welsh's time there, 56.22 as he racks his bike and heads up onto the run. We'll see how much time he spends in transition.
I can guarantee he's going to make up a big chunk of time right here. I mean, it's free time.
Yes, and there's Michael Collins, Julie, so he didn't lose too much time on the bike either. He had a very fine split there. Mike Collins split 57.41, good enough for third overall.
Well, Mark's just where he wants to be, comfortable lead, and he's just striding out naturally. Unfortunately, he won't be able to see any of the other runners until it's too late, so he's going to have to just keep a pace going. And talk about a pace. These girls have been dueling it out now for the full 38 kilometers, just trading the lead back and forth. In fact, Carol, I don't think has been challenged like this on the bike in a long time.
And there goes Greg Welsh going off in second place. Glenn Cook now in third place, and it means Michael Collins should be going out there onto the run course in fourth place. So we look forward to a great battle, and coming in it looks like fifth placer. That's Todd Jacobs from Leucadia, California.
Todd is also a fine runner. He's getting a little bit of a slow start, but I think he'll make up some ground.
And he's also more widely known as an ultra-distance specialist, having done the strongman in Japan and doing very well there. He also got a second in the Wildflower Half Ironman recently.
You can tell Todd's put in some time in the gym. He's very well muscled and a little bit bigger than a couple of the other guys you saw head out ahead of him. But those muscles might get a little heavier on the run.
And Mark Allen, no stranger to this course through Stanley Park. Remember, he's the three-time defending champion and the record holder. 1 hour, 48 minutes, 14 seconds. It's hard to believe that he could possibly beat that today, given the conditions and given the fact that his bike portion was a couple of minutes slower than last year.
As feet warm up, these cool conditions will become a benefit, not a hindrance.
And Mark Allen now, as we look at the graphic, approaching Lost Lagoon in beautiful Stanley Park.
That's Carol Montgomery, still chasing down the red suit of Isabelle Mouton of France. And they're coming up on the final bridge, and then it's a turn towards home.
The first Japanese triathlete has just arrived in transition. That's Taro Shirato, who just got a fifth place in the Japan Strongman. Hideo Miyazuka, his countryman, is just behind him, and he is Japan's fastest ever Ironman triathlete.
Let's pick it up with the women now as they're heading down the final stretch into English Bay. And Isabelle Mouton of France will be our women's leader coming into the transition area. But she is not alone. Carol Montgomery, right on her heels, is going to want to make a fast transition and reestablish her lead into the run. Let's see if she can do it.
Well, Carol's really got a race in her hands now because Isabelle Mouton has just recorded a time just over 62 minutes for the bike portion.
Oh, Steve, Carol is down into the mud. She might have just twisted her hip there.
Well, fortunately, she doesn't appear injured. She's got a smile on her face, probably just a little embarrassment there. She lost a few vital seconds, but hopefully she can make it up here in transition because there's an 11-kilometer run just ahead of them.
Well, Carol wouldn't have been smiling if she wasn't pretty confident coming into this run. But Isabelle has improved greatly over the last few months of racing, and I think she's going to try and hold that lead for as long as she can.
And maybe she's capable of it. We have to remember that she has won 9 out of the last 11 races she's competed in. But there goes Canadian Carol Montgomery, and she's got the home crowd advantage here, Julie.
Oh, Isabel has had the lead for the whole bike. She knows she's done the lion's share of the work. So she's going to keep her lead as long as she can. She's going to make Carol work for it. And working is exactly what Carol's doing.
But Mark Allen seems to have his work cut out for him, even though he's established a fairly solid lead, because the man right behind him, remember, is the reigning world champion. And he's a tremendous runner, Julie. But we have to remember, too, Mark has done sub 50 minutes for 10 miles before. This man has the PR for 10K, 29 minutes and 12 seconds. Glenn Cook, also a great runner. This man has travelled the world too. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, he competed in an Ironman race in England, did a time just a few minutes over 9 hours. Glenn hails from the West Country in England, and prior to coming out to the West here to compete at the time is now over for Glenn Cook, who finds himself in third place. And that's behind two of the fastest runners in the sport of triathlon.
Back at the transition area, we now have our third and fourth place women coming in. This is Beatrice Mouton coming in, and Sarah Coop of Great Britain. These two women are very evenly matched on the run, so there'll be a great duel for third place as well.
And Beatrice's time for the bike, 66 minutes, a little slower than her sister, some 4 minutes off the pace. Sarah had a very good one, 64 minutes, but there's Janet Stamper Holland now. She's having a great race today. She may be surprised, but again, conditions a little different from what she's used to, as she's from Flagstaff, Arizona.
Janet has got long runner's legs, as you can see. We'll have three women fighting it out for third place in no time.
But Julia, it appears as though there's no doubt about who's going to be first and second. It's just a matter of what order. Look at the bike results here. Isabel Mouton the fastest, with Carol Montgomery second fastest, and Sarah Coop third fastest, some 2 minutes back. So into the first couple of kilometres, Isabel Mouton has established the lead, but it's a very slim one over Carol Montgomery, the Canadian. So with our leader, Mark Allen, really establishing a lead out there, the question remains, will he set a record? On the bike, he was the fastest at 55.40. Second was Greg Welsh, and then third, Michael Collins, some 2 minutes back of Mark Allen. Can he beat his record? Stay with us to find out. We're back with the Vancouver International Triathlon, and we're looking at the two leading ladies right now, and the Canadian Carol Montgomery is now up to the shoulders of Isabel Mouton of France.
Steve, the fact that Carol has bridged a significant gap to move up to Isabel tells me that this is now a tactical race. She's got the confidence to just sit back and let Isabel maybe fade a little bit. She's definitely running stronger, and she's relaxing right now.
She is indeed, and one man who is looking strong all the way. Remember that third place out of the swim, quite relaxed, just a couple of seconds back. The man known as the Grip, the two-time Ironman champion, Mark Allen. Okay. We have to remember, Mark had 20 consecutive victories from, I think it was November 1988, Julie. And there's the man who beat him once this year. Just two men have beaten him this year, and that is Mike Pick and Greg Welsh. Glenn Cook would love to be up there, but he's lost a little ground on the run, but he's certainly maintaining that number 3 position.
I've got to wonder, Steve, if jet lag is affecting this international field. They've flown long distances, and it could be catching up. Good point here. Carol Montgomery, hometown favorite, local girl, no jet lag at all.
These triathletes certainly get around. In fact, Isabel was in Tahiti just a while ago, an event she came second in, and Greg Welsh, in fact, won that event. And Mark Allen certainly gets around too. Last year he was in Chile, he was in the Gold Coast in Australia, and won their World Cup for the third time. And as Mark approaches third beach in the final few kilometres of the run, he's had a good chance to look at Stanley Park, and two men who had a good chance. A man leading the international field today for the fourth time, it is Mark Allen with a clear lead over the second and third places, Greg Welsh and Glenn Cook of Great Britain. So Mark Allen now looking ahead. He can see that finish line, somewhat deceptive, but it's about a kilometre to go. But still with a few kilometres to go, Julie, Carol Montgomery, the Canadian, now leading.
Carol has established herself in the lead. She may not be more than 2 steps ahead of Isabel Mouton of France, but psychologically she's taken over the burden of setting a fast pace, and she's more than happy to do it.
Mark Allen once again coming towards that finish line. A convincing victory for this man. He has dominated this event just as he has dominated the Nice Triathlon. There he had 8 out of 8 victories, and today is going to claim his 4th victory out of 4 attempts. He's not going to get a record, but Julia's pace is phenomenal. He's averaged 5 minutes and 17 seconds a mile as he now comes in the final 10 metres, and Mark Allen once again crosses that line. His time today, 1:49.18, the second fastest ever time on this course.
The win is always great for Mark, but as a testament to the strength of his competitors, he's got to be feeling really happy.
And I think also feeling happy would be Glenn Cook. He's now in 3rd place, but he's held that convincingly. Look at that. We can't see the 4th place man, but Greg Welsh hanging on comfortably to 2nd place, and he is also having a phenomenal run. At the halfway point, he was averaging sub 5 minutes and 20 seconds a mile, so he shouldn't have a problem holding on to 2nd place. We have to remember, just last weekend, he was in Toronto and got a 2nd place there. But what is going to happen in this women's race, Julie?
Steve, I love to see women running stride for stride. Carol is obviously biding her time to make a move. When that will come is only Carol's guess, but I think Isabel is going to try with all her heart to respond or maybe initiate one of her own.
And here comes that 2nd placer, Greg Welsh, the world champion from Australia. And look at his time, 1:51.02 for him. He did a 36.18 split, 2nd fastest to Mark there on the run course so far. But that's almost 2 minutes back, so a comfortable victory for Mark, but a very pleased Greg Welsh.
Win, lose, or draw, you'll always get a smile from Greg Welsh.
And look at the camaraderie between these two great triathletes.
They're friends and competitors. I mean, that's great.
And here comes Glenn Cook, his first time here at the Vancouver International Triathlon. 3rd in Beijing, China today, 3rd in Vancouver, and his time, 1:52.22. Glenn's last time in Canada was 1988 when he got a 3rd place then in the unofficial World Championships behind Mike Pigg and Mark Allen. So a great return to Canada for Glenn Cook. Let's take a look at the final standings. Mark Allen at 1:49.18, Greg Welsh 2nd, 1:51.02, and Glenn Cook at 1:52.22 for 3rd place.
Mark, another nice win here at the Vancouver International Triathlon. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your race?
I felt pretty good on the swim. The bike ride was really a little bit dangerous. You know, the roads were real slippery, and I really had to slow down on the descents. I figured it was better to, slow down and lose some time through the corners than to fall and not finish. Actually, I felt pretty good on the run, but I knew Greg Welsh was back there, and he's probably the most dangerous guy to be running against. So there really wasn't any point where I could let up.
Give us your feelings. You're running through Stanley Park. It's scenic. It's beautiful. Did you get a chance to look around?
I was breathing too hard to see much of it. Fortunately, I got to run the course the other day and, enjoy the beauty of it. But on race day, you have this little circle, and that's about all you see is right in front of you.
And that's all Mark had to see today, but this man should be very proud too because he moved from 7th last year to 4th this year. Michael Collins from the US at 1:55.05 for 4th place overall. And in 5th place, we had Todd Jacobs coming through. Another very good time for him. A great race today as he records a time of 1:55 and 34 seconds. Let's go to Julie in the massage tent.
Greg Welsh, 2nd place today. You pretty happy with that?
Yeah, no disgrace coming 2nd to Mark Allen, that's for sure, but it would have been nice to come 1st, but it was one of those days where we sort of had to be very, very careful on the bike ride, and I tried to run as hard as I could, and as it ended up, the 2nd place.
Is there a bit of pride involved when you compare the run splits at the end of a triathlon? Do you like to at least one-up him on a fast run?
Yeah, certainly do, but knowing that Mark's got a race on Thursday, the thought goes to the back of my mind where I think that maybe he eased up, but, being a great competitor and ambassador that Mark is, I don't think he would have eased up, and I think he would have given 100% whatever the result.
And another man who obviously gave 100%, the first Canadian home, a member of the Bike Barn team out of Penticton, Rob Breathitt, with a time of 1:57.20. Getting a rose for what he did there today, as does every triathlete at the finish line. But look at this, the two ladies are now approaching that finish line. Carol Montgomery has just opened up a gap of a couple of metres over Isabel. What a fight to the finish, Julie.
Steve, it's come down to the last kilometer, and I'm sure Carol had prearranged a spot where she was going to make her move. With all her friends and family there to greet her, she's not going to want to share that last 400-meter stretch with anybody.
And rounding out the top 10 for the men there, Julie, is Preben Nielsen at 1:58.06. Gary Brown there from Vancouver, 1:59.29. And the final competitor to go under 2 hours, the Japanese entry, Taro Shirato, as he stormed towards that finish line. He's pushing hard now. The thousands of spectators who have lined the course are delighted to see this short course specialist from Japan as he closed in at 1:59.59. A lot of relief there at the finish line for these athletes. A lot of refreshments and attention paid to each and every one of them. They're being congratulated by race director Don Andrews, who's now looking out for the women's winner. And look at this. Carol Montgomery has now opened up 10 to 15 metres. What an exciting finish for this local lady. Remember that what she's going after is not only the win, but the record held set last year by Kendall Morrison. That was 2:04.47. And it looks as though both of these ladies may be breaking that record as now Carol comes into the final 200 metres, being urged on by some fellow male competitors.
Carol is now running on legs that are just full of joy because her family, her friends, her town is there to welcome her. And it's amazing at the end of a race that these women can come up with a down-to-the-finish-line sprint.
And look at the relief on Carol's face as she knows she's got it in the bag now after 2 years of getting second places in her hometown. She wins, and it is a new record, 2 hours, 3 minutes and 23 seconds. And Isabel Mouton just a few seconds back, 5 seconds in fact at 2:03.28. So both those ladies have beaten the record held by Kendall Morrison. What a tremendous race.
And what a classy move there. Isabel and Carol even had enough left over to give each other a hug of support.
And the reports we've had from the course, Julie, is that there's some 5 to 6 minutes up on the third place lady. What an incredible race between them today.
Way to go, Carol.
A lot of fans there for this local girl. Canada's pride and joy, their number one triathlete.
They've even got her kissing babies right after her finish.
And here comes the third place. The lady was second in the Japanese Ironman and in the New Zealand Ironman. Third today in her time, 2:09.33 for Sarah Cooper of Great Britain.
Sarah's looking over her shoulder, and I have a feeling that, yep, there she is. Janet Stamper-Holland from USA was closing in fast, but ran out of real estate.
She did 2:10.04, but let's recap the ladies. Carol Montgomery first at 2:03.23, a new course record. Isabel Mouton second, and Sarah Cooper third. And with Janet Stamper-Holland closing in for fourth place, Julie Moss had a chance to talk with our winner.
Carol, outstanding race. You came off the bike a little behind. What was that due to?
I think just a lot of races in a row, and I felt really tired and couldn't quite get going today on the bike. I guess the cold. But just had enough confidence in the run. I knew if I kept her in sight and kept really close that I'd out-sprinted because I figured I'd want to win more than she did.
You had the hometown behind you, definitely, and that was great. Did that make you feel like you had to push a little harder?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I really wanted to win here really bad today, so it definitely helped. And all along the seawall, everybody would yell out my name, and they'd never yell Isabel, so everybody knew who I was, so it was really neat.
What point did you know that you were going to reel Isabel in?
Well, I knew I'd catch her on the run, and I just knew it was a matter of sticking with her. And I didn't have it in me to drop her today. I just was tired. So I just figured I'd leave it to the sprint, and I'm pretty confident with my sprint because I figured I wanted to win more than she did. So I just left it and risked it all to the sprint at the end.
Your last couple races, you've had a string of a little bad luck. Today, I think you narrowed it down to a slip just in the transition area as you started the run.
Yeah, I don't know. I felt like an idiot because I really crashed there and got mud all up me, and there was everybody around there too, and the TV camera is right there on me, so I looked like quite the fool, I think. But it was really slippery in there. It was muddy. It really was.
Well, I think your outstanding finish was anything but foolish. It was really wonderful to watch. Congratulations.
Thanks, Julie.
Congratulations indeed. And as Isabel reflects on her own second place, she eagerly awaits the arrival of twin sister Beatrice, who's going to cross that line in fifth place. Carol Montgomery claiming the victory in the final 100 metres over Isabel Mouton. We've had a great race all around, Julie. Your impressions of it?
Steve, obviously I'm very happy that Mark pulled off his fourth win here in Vancouver. But even more impressive was the fact that he was really pressed by Greg Welsh and Glenn Cook. And it really rounded out the international flavor that's developed here at this race. For the women, Carol Montgomery's come off a couple of close second-place finishes, followed by some bad luck. So for her to really pull off a strong, impressive win here against Isabel Mouton in front of her family and her hometown crowd, that's got to be a very special victory. And that hometown crowd really supported this race in spite of some bad weather. That was the most impressive element about the race here for me.
It certainly was, and it's been a pleasure working with you, Julie Moss. For Julie Moss at the finish line, as we see plenty of others still to cross that line, I'm Steve King.